So what we're going to take a look at now is React Cropper. And whereas React Dropzone is a well-maintained, up-to-date library, React Cropper, not so much. If you take a look at the commits and the releases, you can see a kind of sporadic release, and what's gone on in 1.2 and 1.1 is basically not very much. But it still works just fine. And it also provides an interesting example of a package that's not quite so well maintained, and how we can integrate this into our application. So let's take a look at what we need to do for this. Well, first of all, we'll need to install React Cropper, and it also provides some CSS via Cropper.js as well. And React Cropper is really just a wrapper, a thin wrapper around the Cropper.js library, and presents it as a React component. But if we take a look at the example, then we're going to have to do a few things quite differently to this, because this is using a React component class, and it's also using a ref, which is the legacy way of getting a reference to an element in the actual DOM as opposed to the virtual DOM. But we do have options, and let's take a look at what we need to do. So let's head back to VS Code, and I'll just clean up my open windows. And inside the client app, inside the source, inside the app, inside common, and inside photo upload, let's create a new file. And we'll call this photo widget cropper.tsx. And we'll add the snippet to create the React arrow function for this. Even though it's kind of easier for a component like this to create it using a React class component, we're not going to use any classes in our application. We're going to stick 100% with React hooks for all of our examples. So the first thing we need to do is actually install React Cropper. So inside the terminal window, I'm just going to do npm install and React Cropper and press return. And once this is installed, let's just head back to the docs. I just want to copy a couple of lines from here. And I just want to get the CSS and the Cropper import as well. I could of course type this in manually, but there's a lazier way to do it, so that's the way I'm going to do it. And what we'll find is that we get a little warning telling us that it cannot find a declaration file for module React Cropper. So what we'll also do is try and use the npm install at types React Cropper as well, and see if we can get the typings for this. So I'll just run this particular command as well. And this was successful. So we do have some typings for this. And let's just go back to the documentation to see if there's anything we can use inside here. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to copy the component with some of its properties and just copy this into my clipboard, head back to my code, and just paste this in. And just reformat as well. And if we go back and take one more look, and take a look at the crop method inside here, we're not going to use this one. And what we can do inside our cropper is we can get the cropped canvas, and then we can either convert it to a data URL, or we can convert it to a blob. And we'll be using blobs, binary large objects, to send up our image to the server as opposed to a data URL. But what we need to do is we need to get access to the image via a ref from our actual DOM, and then we can run this particular function. And what we can also do is pass in our image preview for the source of this image, and then we can set the style, and we can also set the aspect ratio as well. And there's a whole bunch of other options that we get available with Cropper.js. So first of all, let's just add all of the different options we want to add inside here. And we'll also pass down our preview image from our photo widget upload. So let's just do that. And I'll just go to the photo upload widget. And we've got our files and set files. And we'll create another piece of state here for image and set image. And we'll say use state. And we'll give it a type of blob. And we'll just set this equal to null. And this also means we need to provide the union type of null in here as well. And what we'll do then is inside our resize image, we'll pass in our cropper component. So I'll say photo widget cropper and import this. And we also only want to display this if we have some files in our files piece of state. So I'm just going to add the check here as well and say files.length is greater than 0, and I'll just close that after the widget cropper. And we want to pass in two things here. First of all, we want to pass in our setImage function, and we also want to pass in the image preview as well. So let's add the setImage equal to setImage, and we'll also pass in an image preview property, and we'll set this equal to the files preview, or the files at index of 0 and the preview. And we'll need to go add the interface into our photo widget cropper. So we'll add the interface and call it iProps, and we'll say set image, and we'll pass in the file as blob as the parameter, and it will return void. And we'll also add the image preview, which is going to be a string. And we'll add the React FC and pass in iProps. And then we'll make use of set image and image preview and destructure these. And the source of the image can be the image preview. And we'll need a function to crop the image, but I'll just remove this for now. And what we'll focus on is just setting all of the properties we need inside here. And we'll start with the ref. And what we can use is there's a React hook called useRef. So we'll make use of that. And we'll say const cropper is equal to useRef. And we'll bring this in from React. And this returns a mutable ref object whose .current property is initialized to the passed argument. And this is going to get a reference to the cropper input element from our DOM. And we'll give this an initial value of null. And the useRef needs to be imported from React. And then we can set the ref equal to the cropper. Now we're going to start seeing some issues here that I'm going to come back to later. So this is going to be underlined, and it's going to give us an issue regarding the typing of this. And we can specify a type for this as well, and I could specify the type of cropper, but it still doesn't resolve this particular problem. And I'm going to talk about that a bit later, or very shortly. But first of all, let's get everything set up and configured apart from this ref. And in the style of this, we're going to set the height of the image to 200. And we'll keep the width as 100. And then we're going to configure all of the cropper.js options that we need. And the aspect ratio is going to be 1/1, which is going to enforce a square image. The guides we'll keep as false. We'll give it a view mode, and we'll set this equal to 1. There's 4 different view modes, but this is the one that allows us to confine the user to the box itself and not be able to set an image outside of the canvas of the image that we've uploaded. We'll also set the drag mode, and we'll set this equal to move, and we'll set the scalable property equal to true, so the user can zoom into the image. The crop box movable we'll set to true, and the crop box resizable we'll set to true, and then we need to provide the crop method, and we'll set this equal to crop image. And we're going to need to create this particular function. So let's add a crop image function in here as well, and we'll call it const crop image. and it will take no parameters. And what we want to do, we want to check to see if the cropper reference exists. So we'll say if cropper dot current, and it's a type of cropper dot current dot get cropped canvas, and we'll check to see if this is undefined, and if it is, then we'll just return and go no further. And if it's not undefined, then we need to actually get the cropped canvas and convert this to a blob. So once again, we'll check to see we've got the cropper, and we've got the cropper.current, and we've got the cropper.current, and then we can use the getCroppedCanvas method. And we want to convert this to a blob. So we'll say toBlob, and we'll say blob of type any. And then inside here, we'll use the setImage method that we're passing down, and we'll set this to the blob that we're passing in the callback. And then as the second parameter here, we can specify the type, and this is going to be a type of image/JPEG. And let's reformat because that's looking a bit of a mess. And there's a number of checks inside here because we need to make sure we've got something inside our ref. Then we use the getCroppedCanvas method to get the canvas that we're cropping, and we're converting this to a blob. And in the callback here, what we're doing is taking our passed in blob and setting our image to the value of this. And this is something that we can then pass up to our server. There's another property I've missed inside here that is pretty important, and that's the preview image. So I'm just going to add a preview inside here as well. And what this gives us is a preview image, and it gives us a class property. So I'm going to say image-preview, and we'll be able to use this on a div that we'll create, and this will give us a preview of our cropped image. And this is all well and good, but I've still got this problem that I haven't dealt with yet, which is this ref. And because this is a bit of a pain, I'm going to talk about this separately, and we'll talk about this next and resolve it next.